Today, we're going to go over the basics of tubing design in Autodesk Fusion. What's going on, everyone? Today, we're going to be jumping into Autodesk Fusion, and I'm going to show you the basics of working with tubing in that program. Now, tubing can be for something like a full roll cage. It can be as simple as planning out a bumper. You can be doing a little rack for the back of one of your scale trucks. There's a ton of options for tubing. It's used all over the place in the full-size world, and that's why I always find it so useful to design with it in Fusion for our RCs. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, Autodesk Fusion can be had for free. It's a super powerful program. It's something that's a little bit more advanced, or it can be more advanced. You can use it in a very basic way, but it has all the capabilities of a very high-end CAD package that you can get for no cost. If you're looking for more information on getting Autodesk Fusion for free, you can find that on the Autodesk website, and I'll probably try and put a link to where you can find those resources down below. Let's jump into the software and go over our topic for today. So today I'm not designing something specifically around a pre-existing model, like a body or something like that. I'm going to go over the very basics of this so that you can kind of take that and then apply it. This is just I'm going to try and give you as many tips as related to tubing as possible and a few different approaches that you can take to actually accomplishing this. There are some built-in tools in Autodesk Fusion that make this much simpler than some of the other CAD programs, and I like to utilize those as much as possible. So anyway, this is what your blank document will look like when you start Fusion. From here, you pretty much always have to start with a sketch of some sort. And at the top, the first button up there is the sketch. So when you click that, it'll pull up your three planes, front, right, and top planes. And that's just for you to decide where you want to start. And this can be somewhat just up in the air. It just kind of depends on what your thought process is as you go through a project. We're going to start with just the most basic style for today. So I'm clicking on the front plane to start, and then we're going to sketch kind of the profile of what we want our tubing to do. So I clicked on line up top, or I'm going to hit escape. You can hit L for line, X for construction, and that toggles that little box right there on top. And all that means is that when you draw, it's going to give you a dashed line. Those are helpful so that it doesn't want to build something off that line. It's like a reference line for yourself. So I created just a vertical line that goes across that center point, which is called the origin. Then up at the top, I went to this triangle shape, which stands for the midpoint. So we click on midpoint, and I want to click on that line we drew and then that origin. That just means that that line that we have will be equidistant from the center section to either end. If I adjust this, it will adjust both sides, and that's all that constraint did for us. Just a little bit of housekeeping on that. So now we're going to hit L again for line. You can see that it's still in construction mode, so if we hit X again, that will go off. Now, here we're just going to go, we're just going to keep this as simple as possible. So we're just going to go up and then over and then back down, right? Now you can tell this line, not exactly perpendicular. It's got more than a 90-degree angle, which is not what I want. So I'm going to use this horizontal vertical constraint, and I'm going to click that. Now this one over here doesn't have that symbol, which stands for horizontal vertical. Instead, it has two perpendicular constraints, which basically accomplishes the same thing. So that's not super important. Now, we've got this shape, but all these lines are blue, meaning that there is no distance tied to them. They're not defined fully. You always want your sketches to be defined fully. What that means is that we're going to hit D for dimension. We're going to click on a line and drag over. I'm going to make that 50 millimeters tall. So now we have a height. It will not go up and down, but it can still go left to right. So for that, you can do two ways. You can either dimension this top here. There's more than two ways. You could dimension from the center to the outside, half of a distance. You could just dimension this bottom line. It doesn't really matter. It's all going to accomplish the same thing. So we're going to call that 80 for whatever reason. Now, basically what I'm doing is I'm creating the sweep that I want my tubing to be. Now, if you know tubing in the full-size world, you know that it doesn't make sharp bends like that. You either have to have a nice rolled radius or you're planning on two tubes coming together, which both could be viable. It just depends on what your design is. Let's just do this one first. So we're going to hit Finish Sketch, and now we just have this profile. Now up here, you'll see that icon that says pipe. That's not necessarily normally up there. Sometimes or almost always, it's down in this menu. So you'll have to hit Create and then come down. I like to click the three dots and hit Pin to Toolbar because it's a tool that I use super often. Normally, you would not see it up there, so you would have to do this same process. And that's why mine is up there. So now if we select that, it says, this thing on the right that pops up, it's just like, this is your instructions. Start from the top, work to the bottom. Pretty much how these go. So path basically says, where do you want this pipe to be? Tubing, pipe, whatever you want to call it. If we select our line, it'll select everything on that. And that's because this checkbox is done. So if I click that, you can see it selects all of those. And then it puts in there just a starting point of 10 millimeters. Now, if I deselect that, and I deselect that checkbox, and I click, I hover over, it'll only select one line. Then you can't do an opposite line over here. It will only do this function for continuous tubes. So you just have to do those one at a time if that was your goal. But I'm going to reselect that box, and then select it again. So we're going to jump down a little bit. First, I don't want a 10 millimeter. For printed tube work, I almost always go with 6 millimeters. So that's the size that I think is a stable, easily printed tubing size for 1/10 scale cages. It's a little bit larger than the actual tubing I would use to construct something out of steel. But again, for printing, this is the size that I like to use. Now, this distance thing up here, where it says 1, that basically means 100% of the length. If I go to 0.5, it will take this thing and it will only go to the midpoint. So let's see, if I go 0.5, you'll see, there you go, 50% of the way. That's all that stands for. 0.75 gets us a little bit further. 0.8, you can get the picture now, right? That's all that distance is showing. So I almost never change that. There's very few situations where I want that. Now, you can see that there's also a hollow checkbox option down here. Now, when I'm constructing a chassis with real tubing, you might think that I would want to do that. I almost never do. There's very few reasons I need to have that checked as hollow. And if you plan to 3D print, I would almost not suggest that you use it at all. So just leave it as full. That just gives you a solid body all the way around. So that created a simple tube structure. Now that would be like 3 individual pieces of tubing, mitered, cut, and then put together. Might not be what you're after. You might be over something that's more of like a bent roll cage hoop of some sort. Now, if you went this way and then you decided, I don't know that I like that, down at the bottom are the things that we've done so far. We first made a sketch, and then we made the tubing or the pipe command. If you go to the first option and you just right click and you hit Edit Sketch, it takes you back to that step. Here we can go grab our fillet tool, which is going to be in Modify and then Fillet. And then in here, you can grab these two and you can grab these two all at once. And now it puts in a basic radius of 15 millimeters. We can change that right now. We're going to go to 10. Doesn't really matter. Hit enter, and now we have 2 equal radii, 1 on each side. We're going to hit finish, and we don't have anything that looks proper because it kind of lost the lines. So we need to go back to our tubing, hit edit feature by right clicking on it. I can either just go in and select it, or you could X out and unselect everything and then reselect. Doesn't really matter. It accomplishes the same thing. But hit OK, and now you've got, again, a piece of tubing. It's a pretty simple setup as far as when you're in a simple flat plane. Where things get more difficult is when you start needing to build off of that and do other things, because nothing always lines up, or you don't always want it on just one plane, a flat plane, a right plane, or something like that. So that's when things can get difficult. And that's what we'll jump into now. So we're gonna hit sketch again, and then at this point, just bear with me, it doesn't really matter which of these three we're going to choose, because we're gonna do a different type of sketch called a 3D sketch, which, again, bear with me. So I'm just gonna select the top plane, and we're gonna rotate there. Now, on this dialog that pops up on the right, the very bottom one says 3D sketch. So we're gonna select that. And now it's going to let us kind of sketch in all kinds of ways, but you have to be very careful when doing this. And I'll show you kind of some ways that I do it that kind of give me like some best practice things. So now that we have the ability to 3D sketch, we can kind of look at our piece of our existing tubing, as you want to call it, and we can kind of design from here. Now, I want to create a line that goes from the center point of this tube and then it continues on from there. Now, sometimes this acts a little funny. I don't necessarily know the most reliable ways for us always to be able to select that midpoint. Sometimes it just doesn't want to let me do it. So I'll come into the create and I'll click point, which is down here. And if I put a point on that circle, on that edge, that visible edge, it doesn't have to mean anything, doesn't have to be in anywhere specific, but now it gives me a projected piece of geometry that I can use. So now I can come in and it will let me select that center point reliably. Again, I don't know why, and I don't know that it's the right way to do it, but it's the way that has worked for me very reliably. So now I have clicked a line starting on the center point of that visible edge there. And now it allows me to drag this out. Now, again, we're in a 3D sketch, so we don't necessarily always know where this line is trying to be. One thing that I like to do is you can see the axis, the three axes of our sketch here. The green line is technically the Y-axis, red is X, and then the Z-axis is the blue. And if you get your line in a way, it will project out that axis. And I like to do that. I like to just go straight down on that axis, and then I'll go from there, and then I'll go straight down another axis, and then I'll go out a different one, because what I'm trying to create is kind of like a down bar that's going to come out from here. Now, from here, I'm going to go all the way over to the bottom of our first piece of tubing. And now you can see that this line here is not flat. It's not where it needs to be. I want that to be in a nice, even way. So I'm going to just kind of take and drag this down till it's a little bit closer. Doesn't have to be exact. Then we're going to use that constraint again, that horizontal vertical. So I clicked that, and I'm going to click that line. And now it puts it perfectly in the area that I want. So basically what I'm doing is I'm giving myself a nice, easy framework that I can use to dimension where I want to be, and we can go from there. So I've created those construction lines. I'm going to hit D for dimension, and I'm going to select the distance that I want to go back. And I'm going to say that's going to be 75. We can go back and adjust any of these things as we go, which is great. Now, that was one dimension that I needed, and it put everything as fully defined, because everything else is along an axis and then it's just constrained at that point. So now we're going to hit L for line again, X to turn construction off, because this is the line that we want to actually use. And I'm going to go from that center point that we created on that existing edge, and I'm going to go back to this point all the way back here. And that is at a bit of an angle kicked off. You could have done this in a couple of other ways. This is just the way that I like, and it makes things pretty easy to adjust, because like I can go in and say finish now, and I'm going to go create a new pipe, select the path, which is that. And now you can see it wants to cut here. And instead of a cut, we can either do join if we're going to 3D print this, or I typically like to do new body for now for a couple of reasons. So I'm going to hit new body on this one and hit OK. So that brought it back. Now say that I feel like that goes a little bit too far back. We can do an right click, edit on the second sketch down there that we've created. And we can just shorten that. Let's go to 60. And now I'm like, okay, I think that that angle looks a little bit better. So I'm going to go up to create, go down to mirror, and then we're going to use bodies. We're going to select that body, and we're going to do plane. We're going to select that right plane and hit OK. And now there's one on each side. You could have done that even if you joined them. So by using mirror features, which we can do on another example and show you guys that. But that's just an easy way to get that accomplished. So pretty simple on the tubing side as far as that goes. From here, if you wanted, you want to say, like, let's create an X bar that goes from up here to down here. You know, we can do it from both sides. We can mirror it. We'll just play around with that. Now, I'm going to, again, just use the top plane as my plane that I'm set with. 3D Sketch is already selected. You do want to be careful. Turn that off if you're not trying to sketch in 3D, because it can grab random points off of things if you've got a lot else going on in your model. So turn that off unless you absolutely are using it. It's just my best piece of advice. On the left side, we're going to expand the sketch window, and I'm going to turn on that second sketch that we did. And what that's going to do is that's going to give me that point again as a visible point. Now I can hit P for project, and then I can go in and just grab that point and hit OK. And now that point is in my new sketch, just to make things a little bit easier. So clicked on the line, or again, you could hit L, and then we can hover over that and make sure that it's highlighting that that is the point that we're grabbing. And then we can just kind of go down here and wait till it gives us the end point for the circle and hit finish sketch. And that gives us another line to go up. Hit pipe, select our line, do join or new body. Let's do join. Now, when we do join, right now we have 3 bodies. 1 is the main hoop, 2 is this down bar, 3 is this down bar. When I hit join, since that piece is touching all of those, we are going to have just body 1 left. There you go. Body 1 is all that is left up here. See that now? So now say that I want this going the other way as well. We can go up to create, mirror, and now rather than bodies, because if we select bodies, it's going to mirror everything, which is still actually kind of is going to work in this situation, but it's not what you would want. So like you see how it's doing that, but it's actually overlapping everything that you've done again. And in most times there's going to be other things around, and that's just not going to be what you want. So rather than bodies, we are going to go to features, and we are going to select that last pipe feature down in the bottom there that we did, and it will just mirror that one thing into our new design. So there you go. All still in body 1, but it mirrored just that one feature, and now you have your piece of tubing. But say you want like a place to put some lights on top of the roll bar. It can be a little tricky at times, especially if it's not originally centered right over top of that front plane where we started. If this was back off of that, it can be difficult. So I'm going to turn on the very first sketch, and I'm going to turn off the second one. And now those lines in there, you can see that first thing we did. So what I want to do is I'm going to go up to construct, and we need to make a new plane to start sketching from a point that we don't necessarily know where it is. Say this was moved somewhere else. So if we do construct and we do plane at angle, that's one of my favorites to use for tubing, plane at angle. We're going to find that line and select it, and it just gives us a plane based off of that one line. Now, we can rotate that and have it in any orientation that we want. I actually want it in this 0 degree. I want it flat right on the top of that bar. That's what I wanted in the first place. So 0 degrees is where we're going to be. So I'm going to hit OK. And now this is like those 3 planes that we had before, front, right, and top. This is a new construction plane for us to work on. So I'm going to hit a new sketch, select that construction plane, and then I'm going to hit P for project because I just want some reference geometry. I'm going to select that line there and this line over here. Just kind of gives me something to work from. We also have the origin in the center of this, but you know, if we didn't have that, that's why I would be going from there. Now, one other thing is that because of how these tubes interact or intersect, I don't actually have that midpoint. So I'm going to hit P for project again, and I'm going to hit that center line that we actually based the whole plane off of, and I'm going to use that. Rotate back to the top, and I'm going to go from that tube that we just grabbed. Now, if there's too much going on, go turn some stuff off. Like if you want to turn off the whole roll bar, you can turn that off. It just makes things cleaner to look at. It's an easy thing to do. Turn stuff off. Make sure that you're not like looking around too much if you can't tell where you're at. Make it visually simple, and that will make things better for you. So in this case, I'm going to just go from there, and I'm going to create myself a little pad that has a 2.6 millimeter hole in it that is 8 millimeters wide and 8 millimeters deep, and then we're going to put that hole not quite centered, so we're going to go 3 millimeters off the backside. Now that hole is not defined, and that's because the left to right is not defined. We could just go put a 4 millimeter dimension on it, or we could hit L for line, X for construction, find the midpoint, and then go to the center of the circle. Then we can use our horizontal vertical constraint to put it there. One reason to do this versus putting that 4 millimeter dimension is that, say you did make it 4 millimeters, but then you're looking at this, you're like, actually, I want that to be 7. Now, mine moved and kept it in the center. It will always be there. But if you would have had that 4, it would be offset by 0.5 millimeter. It's just a practice thing. It's something that I've just made myself do. We're going to take, and I could turn this back on, and you can see that this is based on the center line. So I'm going to hit E for extrude. We're going to select that area. Now this is a 6 millimeter piece of tubing, but we're starting at the center line. So you could come up here and you could go 2 sides if you wanted, and you could go up 3 and down 3. That's one way to do it. It's sitting in a cut right now. That doesn't really matter. Or you can hit symmetric, and then you can just go up one distance and it will do both at the same time. Now, that's pretty simple as far as that goes. We can do a join and make a new, just combine it in. Or again, I'm going to hit new body. So we're going to hit new body. I'm going to hit OK. And now we've got one boss on top of this. The reason I wanted to do that, I'm going to take and do a fillet on the outside just because I always like the way that looks. 3 millimeters, hit OK. I'm going to go inspect up top here. That's the measuring tool. We're going to go from that point to there. Just to double check, we have 60 millimeters. I'm going to, we're going to do rectangular pattern, select that body, and select the axis. We can just select that little line that we had. You could select the x-axis all the way down here. It would be the exact same thing. So now we made this 8 millimeters wide and it's 60 across. So that means that the extent is technically 52 millimeters. And it went the wrong way. So we can just go negative 52. And that took that all the way to the other side now. So again, I measured and it was 60 millimeters. But that's from one side here to one side here. So that's why I took the 60 minus the 8, and that's how I got that math, if that makes sense. And I just did that because it gives me this, and now I can decide if I want 3 or 4 or 5 locations for lights. Let's say 4. Hit OK. Now, I've got that sketch on from before. We're going to turn that back off just so things look better. Now we again have all these bodies. We can hit the combine feature up here, select our main body, and then we select our tool bodies, which is the other items that we want to affect the thing that the tool that we're using now. So we're going to select each of those. On the right side, there's new component, which that's a little bit more advanced. We'll get into it at a later time. And there's keep tools. If you have keep tools checked, it will combine these bodies into that roll bar, but it will also leave 4 copies of those original bodies there. Those 4 separate things that were there before, they'll still be there, but they'll just be additional. So like if I hit OK, it doesn't look anything different, but you can see you have all these bodies up here. And if I just move our body 1, you're going to see those 4 still left. So there is applications when you do want to use keep tool bodies, but for right now it's not that. So we're going to go back, right click the combine, hit edit. We're going to turn that off and hit OK. And now we just have the one body up top. But that's going to do it for this episode of STL Sunday. Hopefully tubing is something that you want to get into. I think that it's a perfect fit for so many things in our field, and I think that you could probably come up with some pretty cool projects if you keep some simple things in mind. If you'd like to see more on STL Sunday, absolutely put down some some suggestions, things you'd like to see in the comments below. That always helps. Also, I'm going to try and create a backlog of these so that they can come out every Sunday reliably. But if you want to be able to see any of those earlier, if you want to see any of the other videos early, I have channel membership available where you can see any of the videos that I'm creating before they go up. You also get some extra behind the scenes videos. I think I'm at like 98 total behind the scenes videos these days. Fun stuff. But if that is of any interest to you, there'll be a link down in the description below where you can find all the details to channel membership. That's going to do it for this video, though. As always, I appreciate you guys watching. Hit the like button on your way out. Thanks again. We'll see you on the next one.